$602,314.18, my father said while cutting into his steak like he was discussing the weather. That's what it cost us to raise you, Claire. My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Across the table, my mother slid a thick manila envelope toward me without even looking up from her wine glass. We printed everything out for you, she said calmly. College prep classes, braces, piano lessons, health insurance, groceries. We were very generous parents. My younger brother Tyler laughed under his breath and muttered, "Honestly, Dad should charge interest." Everyone chuckled, except me. The dining room suddenly felt too warm, too bright. The chandelier above the table reflected against the crystal glasses hard enough to hurt my eyes. I stared at the envelope sitting beside my mashed potatoes while the smell of rosemary chicken turned my stomach. "You're joking," I said finally. My father leaned back in his chair. "Does this look like a joke to you?" Then he tapped the top sheet. "Your mother spent 3 weekends putting those numbers together. If this story speaks to your heart, only if it truly resonates with you, take a second to like and subscribe. And tell me where you're watching from, and what your local time is right now. I always wonder who's out there listening during moments like this. My name is Claire Whitmore. I'm 34 years old, and this was the dinner where I realized my parents had never really seen me as their daughter at all. They saw me as a debt waiting to be collected. The strange part is, this wasn't even the worst thing they did to me. But to explain that, I need to go back to where it really started. Sunday dinners at my parents' house had always been performances disguised as family time. My mother Elaine treated every meal like a country club event, even though we lived in a quiet suburb outside Seattle where nobody cared about linen napkins or imported olive oil. The dining room smelled faintly like lemon polish and burnt candles because she always lit them too early. My father Ronald sat at the head of the table like a judge presiding over a courtroom nobody volunteered to enter. And Tyler, my younger brother by 4 years, somehow always ended up as the star of the evening, no matter how badly his life was going. That night, he showed up 20 minutes late wearing a brand new navy quarter zip and talking loudly about a condo he wanted downtown. "The view overlooks the marina," he said, scrolling through photos on his phone. "Floor-to-ceiling windows. It's sick." I blinked at him. "I thought you got laid off." Tyler shrugged and reached for another dinner roll. "Temporary setback. The market's unfair right now," my mother added quickly, the same way she always defended him. "Companies don't value creativity anymore." Creativity. Tyler had quit 3 jobs in 2 years and somehow still managed to get treated like a misunderstood genius. Meanwhile, I'd spent the last 12 years working 70-hour weeks in consulting, building a life so quietly nobody in my family ever bothered asking what I actually did. "Claire wouldn't understand burnout," Tyler said with a grin. "She's basically a robot." Everyone laughed again. I smiled because that's what I'd trained myself to do. Smile. Stay calm. Don't make scenes. My mother loved saying that phrase when I was younger. "Don't make scenes, Claire." She said it when Tyler crashed my car in high school and blamed me for leaving the keys accessible. She said it when my college acceptance letter arrived and my father told me community college made more financial sense for someone like me. She even said it when Tyler borrowed $8,000 from me after graduation and never paid back a cent. "Don't make scenes." So I learned not to. "Open the envelope," my father said. I pulled out the stack slowly. 14 pages, spreadsheets, dates, categories, costs, winter coat, age 11, asthma medication, summer camp, Christmas gifts. I actually stopped breathing for a second when I saw that one. Christmas gifts. My mother took a sip of wine before speaking again. "You're financially successful now, Claire. We sacrificed a lot for you. It's only fair you contribute back." "Contribute back?" I repeated quietly. "You mean repay you for being my parents?" "Watch your tone," my father snapped immediately. Tyler leaned toward me, smirking. "Honestly, most people would be grateful." I looked around the table, waiting for someone to say this was insane. Nobody did. The grandfather clock ticked softly in the hallway. My mother adjusted her bracelet. My father folded his napkin with careful precision, and suddenly I had the overwhelming feeling that this conversation had been rehearsed before I ever walked through the front door. Then my mother said something that made the entire room go still. "After all, your grandmother intended that money to stay in the family." I looked up sharply. "What money?" For the first time all night, my father's expression changed, just for a second. A flicker, tiny, controlled, but I saw it. And that was the moment I realized there was something they never planned for me to find out. My mother recovered first. She smoothed the front of her cream-colored sweater and gave me that tight smile she used whenever she wanted to pretend nothing uncomfortable had just happened. "Your grandmother believed in supporting family," she said carefully. "That is all your father meant." My father picked up his water glass, but avoided my eyes. Tyler stared down at his phone, suddenly fascinated by whatever was on the screen. The silence around the table felt wrong, too rehearsed, too careful. I folded the invoice back into the envelope slowly. "What money?" I asked again. My father cleared his throat. "You are misunderstanding." "Then explain it to me." His jaw tightened. "Not tonight." That phrase hit me harder than it should have because I had heard it my entire life. "Not tonight, Claire." Whenever questions became inconvenient, whenever something did not fit the version of our family they preferred to present. When I was 9 years old, Tyler broke the glass front cabinet in our living room while throwing a baseball inside the house. I still remember the sound of shattering glass exploding across the hardwood floor. My mother came running in from the kitchen. Tyler pointed at me immediately. Claire distracted me. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but my father cut me off before I could speak. "Not tonight." Then he handed me the broom. I swept up the broken glass, while Tyler sat on the couch eating microwave popcorn. Little moments like that shape you more than people realize. At 12, I wanted to join the school science camp in Olympia. The fee was $300. My mother said the family could not afford it. "We all have to make sacrifices," she told me, while clipping coupons at the kitchen table. 2 months later, Tyler got a brand new dirt bike for his birthday because boys need hobbies to stay motivated. At 16, I worked weekends at Rosie's Diner off Highway 99. Friday nights smelled like burnt coffee and fryer grease that clung to my hair long after I got home. I wore non-slip shoes with holes near the soles because I could not afford new ones yet. One night after a double shift, I walked into the kitchen and found Tyler showing my parents brochures for a spring break trip to Cabo with his friends. "It cost $2,500, he said casually. My mother looked worried for exactly 3 seconds before my father nodded. "Memories matter," he said. I stood there holding my diner apron in one hand and asked quietly, "Could you help me pay for my SAT prep course instead?" My father barely looked up from the brochure. "You are smart enough already, Claire." Tyler grinned at me across the kitchen island. "Guess Cabo wins." They laughed. I pretended to laugh too because I had already learned something dangerous by then. If you acted hurt in my family, people treated you like the problem. The next morning after the dinner with the invoice, I sat inside my apartment staring at the Seattle rain sliding down the windows in crooked lines. My kitchen was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft buzz of my phone vibrating every few minutes with texts from my mother. "We hope you are not overreacting. Families should be able to discuss finances maturely. Your father barely slept." I did not answer. Instead, I opened the scanned copy of the invoice again on my laptop. 14 pages. Every line item painfully specific. Allergy medication age 13, piano tuning services, soccer cleats. Then halfway through page 8, I saw something that made my stomach tighten. Educational account transfer, August 14th. Amount withheld. Confidential family allocation. I frowned. I did not remember any educational account. My grandmother Evelyn died when I was 19, during my second year of community college. She used to send me handwritten birthday cards with $20 bills folded inside. She smelled like lavender soap and peppermint candy, and always called me her steady girl. One summer afternoon when I was 17, she sat beside me on her porch swing while I filled out scholarship applications. "You are going to do something important someday," she told me softly. Not loud, but important. Then she squeezed my hand and added something else I never forgot. "Do not let people convince you that love has to be earned by suffering." At the time, I thought she was talking about hard work. Now, sitting alone in my apartment with rain tapping against the windows, I realized maybe she had been trying to warn me about my own family. I picked up my phone and scrolled to my mother's last message. Then I noticed something strange. Attached accidentally beneath her text was a cropped screenshot of a bank statement. Tyler's name was visible near the top, and directly underneath it was a transfer amount so large my chest went cold. I zoomed in on the screenshot until the numbers blurred together. The transfer amount sat there in clean black text beside Tyler's name, $87,000. My mother must have attached it by mistake while trying to crop something else out. My pulse started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. $87,000 was more money than my parents had ever admitted to having at one time. Growing up, every conversation about money had sounded like a warning. Keep the lights off if you leave the room. We cannot afford waste. College is expensive, Claire. We all have to sacrifice, but apparently sacrifice only applied to me. I called my mother before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the second ring. Claire, finally. Her voice carried that sharp edge she used whenever she felt inconvenienced. You have been ignoring us. What is the educational account transfer? Silence. Not long. Maybe 2 seconds. But enough. I do not know what you are talking about. The screenshot you sent me accidentally. Another pause. Then her tone changed completely. Softer. Careful. That was family business. I am family. Do not start this. I stood up from the kitchen table and walked toward the window. Outside, gray clouds hung low over the city, turning the glass towers downtown into blurry shadows. Was there a fund? I asked quietly. Did Grandma leave me money? My mother exhaled sharply through her nose. Your grandmother was emotional near the end. She made decisions without understanding what was practical. That is not an answer. Tyler needed help. There it was, simple, clean, like that explained everything. I laughed once before I could stop myself, not because anything was funny, because suddenly 20 years of confusion snapped into place so fast it almost made me dizzy. You took my college fund and gave it to Tyler. Do not make this ugly. Ugly? My voice cracked for the first time. Mom, I worked double shifts at Rosie's because you told me there was no money. I ate ramen noodles for 2 years in community college. And look how independent you became. The way she said it made my chest ache worse than if she had screamed, like my struggle had been useful to them, like suffering was part of the plan. Tyler was going through a difficult period, she continued. Your father and I had to make choices. I closed my eyes. Suddenly, I could picture every moment differently. Tyler getting spring break trips while I stayed home working. Tyler failing classes but still receiving endless support. Tyler crashing cars, quitting jobs, maxing out credit cards, always cushioned by invisible money nobody ever admitted existed. Meanwhile, every achievement in my life had been built with exhaustion. How much was in the fund, I asked. That information is private. It was mine. You are being dramatic. I almost answered, but another call came through on my work phone. San Francisco area code. I stared at it for half a second before declining my mother's call and answering. Claire Whitmore speaking. Claire, thank God, a familiar voice said. It was Martin Ellis, senior partner at the firm. I have been trying to reach you all morning. I rubbed my forehead. Sorry. Family situation. Well, your family situation is about to get a lot more interesting. I frowned. What happened? I heard papers shuffling on his end. The board approved it, unanimous vote. The acquisition closes Friday. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The rain against the windows softened into distant static. You are serious? You are officially the youngest equity partner in the company's history, Martin said with a laugh. And after the merger, your shares are going to be worth a ridiculous amount of money. I hope you are ready for that. I sat down slowly on the edge of my couch. Across the room, my mother's last text notification still glowed faintly on my laptop screen. Family should support family. Martin kept talking, but his voice started fading behind another realization building quietly in my chest. Nobody in my family knew. Not my parents, not Tyler. To them, I was still the practical daughter who worked too much and wore sensible shoes to Thanksgiving dinner. The reliable one, the boring one, the one they thought they could pressure into paying emotional debts forever. Claire, Martin asked, you still there? Yeah, I said softly. I am here. But honestly, for the first time in years, I felt like I was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere my family could not reach anymore. Then my phone buzzed again. Tyler this time, I almost ignored it. Almost. But something in my stomach tightened when I answered and heard the panic already creeping into his voice. Claire, he said quickly, listen, before Mom and Dad tell you something crazy, I need to explain what really happened with Grandma's money. Tyler stayed on the line, breathing too fast, like he had been waiting for this moment but still did not know how to control it. Claire, you are not going to like what Mom and Dad told you, he said quickly. I leaned back against my couch, my fingers tightening around the phone. Then start talking. There was a pause, and then his voice dropped lower, careful, rehearsed. The money from Grandma's estate was not supposed to go to you directly. It was structured for family stability. I closed my eyes. That phrase, family stability, it always meant one thing in our house. Whatever helped Tyler. Go on, I said. Mom and Dad said you were too young at the time to manage it responsibly, he continued. They were protecting it. For the household. I opened my eyes again. Rain was sliding down my window in long, uneven streaks. Protecting it from me, I said flatly. Claire, listen, Tyler interrupted quickly. You were already struggling in college. They thought you would drop out. They thought it would get wasted. So you gave it to yourself instead? My voice came out sharper than I expected. Silence again. That silence told me everything he would not say out loud. I stood up and started pacing my apartment. How much? I asked. How much did Grandma leave? Tyler hesitated. Around $140,000, he admitted. My steps stopped. For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Repeat that. It was meant for both of us, he added quickly. Split between siblings. That is what Mom said. I let out a slow breath. Then where is my half? You do not understand the situation back then, he said defensively. Dad's business was struggling. My tuition was due. You were working anyway. You were handling yourself. I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. I was handling myself because I had no choice. Tyler sighed like I was being difficult. Look, it is not like you lost anything. You turned out fine. Something inside me went still at that sentence. Turned out fine. Like survival was compensation. Like being functional was proof I had not been wronged. Who decided I did not deserve to know? I asked quietly. Was that your decision too? Tyler did not answer immediately. Then he said, Mom thought it would be better this way. That was all it took. Not anger, not shouting. Just clarity so sharp it almost felt physical. I ended the call without saying goodbye. My hand was shaking slightly as I set the phone down on the table. The apartment felt smaller than it had an hour ago. I opened my laptop again and searched through the bank screenshot Tyler had accidentally revealed earlier. My mother's name appeared as co-signatory on multiple transfers tied to the same estate account. Each transaction carefully labeled, each one directed away from me, toward Tyler, toward expenses I had been told were impossible. I sat there staring at it until my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. I answered immediately. You talked to Tyler, she said. Not a question. Yes. Then you understand now, she continued smoothly. We made decisions in the best interest of the family. I stood up slowly. You stole from me. Her tone changed instantly. Do not use that word. What word should I use then? I asked. Generosity? You were provided for your entire life, she said firmly. You had food, education, shelter. Some children do not even get that. I worked for all of that, I said. My voice was steady now. I worked while Tyler got everything handed to him. That is not fair, she snapped. Tyler needed more support. And I needed nothing? Silence again. This one lasted longer. When she spoke again, her voice was colder. You are not thinking rationally right now. I am thinking very clearly, I said, for the first time. Another pause. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. If you choose to pursue this, you will hurt this family beyond repair. I almost laughed again. Because somehow I was still the threat in their story. Not the missing money, not the lies. Me. You already did that, I said quietly, and I ended the call. My apartment was completely silent after that. No phone buzzing, no voices, just rain. I walked over to my kitchen counter and looked at the printed invoice still sitting there from the night before. 14 pages of manufactured debt. I picked it up and realized something I had missed before. At the bottom of every page was the same signature, my father's. I had seen that signature my entire life on permission slips, school forms, tax documents. It had always meant authority, finality, trust. Now it looked different. It looked like confirmation. My phone lit up again. Unknown number, then another, and another. I did not need to answer to know what it was. My mother, my father, Tyler. The calls started stacking so fast, the screen barely had time to dim between them. I sat down slowly as the phone kept ringing, vibrating against the wood like it was trying to escape the table. And in that moment, I understood something I had not seen before. The story they had built about me was collapsing, and they had just realized I could prove every part of it was false. The calls did not stop. They multiplied. My phone lit up every few seconds like it had forgotten how to rest. Unknown number. Mother. Father. Tyler. Voicemail after voicemail, stacking silently in the background like weight I could not see, but could feel pressing into the room. I sat on the edge of my couch and watched it happen without answering a single one. At first there were messages, then texts, then emails. My mother started with soft language, almost polite. "Claire, we need to talk like adults." Then it shifted. "You are misunderstanding everything." Then finally, "Do not destroy this family over money." My father's emails were shorter, more controlled. "Call me back. This is not negotiable. You are making a serious mistake." Tyler sent voice messages instead. His voice cracked in the first one. "Claire, please just pick up." In the second, frustration. "Why are you doing this? This is getting out of hand." In the third, anger slipping through. "You are not the only one affected by this." I listened to none of them more than once. Each one felt like it belonged to a version of me that no longer existed. That night I tried to sleep, but my phone kept vibrating on the kitchen counter every time I started drifting off. Around 2 in the morning, I finally muted it and turned it face down. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy, like the absence of something still ongoing somewhere else. By morning, I had 17 missed calls. By noon, 43. I stopped counting after that. Around 3 in the afternoon, a new email arrived. Subject line, "Family Resolution Proposal." It was from my father. Attached was a revised document. No longer an invoice. Now it was labeled Settlement Agreement. My mother had added handwritten notes in the margins, scanned and included. "We are willing to reduce expectations if Claire is cooperative. Family harmony is the priority. This does not need to escalate further." Tyler's name appeared in the signature block as a witness. I stared at it for a long time. Then I opened another folder on my laptop. Inside were documents I had not looked at in months. Bank records, trust summaries, old email threads I had saved without knowing why at the time. Now they lined up differently, patterns I had never been meant to notice. At 5:12 p.m., my mother called again. I answered this time, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to hear the direction this was going. Her voice was different, tired, but still controlled. "Claire, this can still be resolved privately. You sent me an invoice for my childhood," I said. There was a pause. "It was a misunderstanding in tone," she replied carefully. "The intent was transparency. You took money that was not yours." Her tone sharpened slightly. "We managed family resources. You lied to me for years." Another pause. Then she said, "We did what we had to do at the time." I closed my eyes. "And what do you want now?" I asked. "We want you to come home," she said immediately. "We can talk face to face like a family." I almost laughed again, because I could hear it now. The strategy beneath the words. The correction. The cleanup. "No," I said simply. Silence again. Then my father's voice entered the call unexpectedly, like he had been listening in. "Claire, this is not how we raised you to behave." That sentence landed differently now. Not as authority, as exposure. "You did not raise me," I said quietly. "You managed me." The line went dead after that, no goodbye, just silence. I set the phone down and realized my hands were not shaking anymore. That was the strangest part. Not anger, not sadness, just stillness. But stillness did not last long. The next morning, a certified letter arrived at my apartment, then another. Then a courier knocked twice before noon. By evening, my building manager informed me that 3 different people had been seen asking for me in the lobby. I never went down. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table watching the world outside my window continue without me. Cars moving, lights changing, people living inside stories I was no longer part of. At 9:03 p.m., my phone lit up one final time. Tyler again. This time, no preamble. Just a text. "They are scared now. You should see what is happening here." I did not reply. I did not need to. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. I was no longer inside their story, and the silence they left behind was only the beginning of what they were about to lose. The silence did not stay quiet for long. It started to change shape. At first, it was just absence. No calls, no emails, no messages. Then it became something heavier, like pressure building in empty space. I noticed it most on the third morning when I woke up and reached for my phone out of habit, only to find nothing waiting for me. No notifications, no missed calls, nothing. It should have felt like peace. Instead, it felt like abandonment. My apartment was too still. Even the refrigerator sounded louder than usual, clicking on and off like it was the only thing willing to acknowledge I existed. I made coffee. I did not drink. I sat at the kitchen table scrolling through old messages from my mother that now read differently in my head. "We are doing this for your own good. You will understand one day." I did not understand. I only understood that I had stopped being included in whatever story they were still telling themselves. On the fifth day, Tyler called again. I almost did not answer, but something about the persistence made me press accept. His voice was different this time. Not angry, not rehearsed, just tired. "Claire," he said quietly, "Dad is not doing well." I froze slightly. "What does that mean?" "He had a fall yesterday," Tyler continued. "Nothing serious, but Mom is overwhelmed." I stood up from the chair without realizing it. "Is he in the hospital?" "No, he is home," Tyler said quickly. Then a pause. "They are asking for you." I closed my eyes. "They are always asking for something." "This is different," he said. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Mom keeps saying she made a mistake." I did not respond immediately. That sentence felt too light for what it was supposed to mean. "A mistake," I repeated. "About what exactly?" Tyler exhaled. "About everything." The word hung in the air longer than anything else he had said before. That night I went for a walk without thinking about it. Seattle was cold in a way that made people move faster, heads down, collars up, trying to get from one warm place to another. I walked anyway, past cafes closing early, past apartment lights flickering on as people returned to lives I no longer felt connected to. My phone stayed in my pocket, silent for once. I stopped at a small bridge near the water and leaned against the railing. The city reflected in broken pieces on the dark surface below. For a moment, I thought about calling back, not because I missed them, but because silence had started to feel like its own kind of pressure. A voice behind me broke the stillness. "Claire?" I turned. It was my mother. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, just less certain. Her coat was unbuttoned, hair slightly undone, like she had left the house quickly and forgotten how she normally presented herself to the world. "Tyler said you would be out," she said. I said nothing. She stepped closer but stopped a few feet away, like she was unsure of the distance she was allowed to cross. "Your father is not himself," she said softly. "He keeps asking for you." I looked at her carefully. "You asked for money for me for years," I said. "Now you are asking for me?" Her expression tightened, then softened again. "We made mistakes," she said. It was the first time I had heard her say it without defense behind it. Still, it did not feel like enough. "You did not make mistakes," I replied quietly. "You made decisions." She looked down at the ground for a moment. The city noise filled the space between us, cars passing, water moving under the bridge, life continuing without permission. "We thought we were protecting the family," she said. "We thought you would be fine." I laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "I was always fine," I said. "That was never the problem." That seemed to land differently. She looked at me then, really looked at me, like she was seeing something she had avoided for a very long time. "What do you want from us?" she asked quietly. I did not answer immediately, because the truth was I did not want anything anymore. Not apology, not explanation, not even justice. I just wanted distance. "I want you to stop writing me into a story where I owe you my life," I said finally. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. For the first time in my memory, she had no immediate response. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I ignored it. "Tyler is scared," she said after a moment. "Your father is scared." I nodded slowly. "Then maybe now you understand how I felt most of my life." The words did not feel sharp. "Just true." She stepped back slightly, as if absorbing something heavier than she expected. "We are trying to fix this," she said. "We do not know how." I looked past her toward the water again. The reflections had started to blur in the wind. "Then start by stopping," I said softly. She did not argue. That was the most unsettling part. When I walked away from the bridge, she did not follow. She just stood there, small against the night, like someone realizing too late that control had already shifted somewhere else. When I got back to my apartment, there were no messages waiting, no missed calls, no demands, just silence again. But this time, it felt different, not like absence, like space being cleared. And for the first time in days, I opened my laptop without hesitation, not to search the past, but to look forward to something I was not yet ready to name. The next morning, I woke up earlier than I intended. Not because I had to, but because my body no longer knew how to stay in bed when there was nothing waiting for it. The apartment was quiet in the way that felt unfamiliar now, like silence had become something I had to learn again. I made coffee, left it untouched on the counter, and opened my laptop. There were no new messages from my family. That should have felt like relief, but instead it felt like distance stretching further than I could measure. I stared at my screen for a long moment before opening a blank document titled Only with Today's Date. For the first time in years, I was not responding to anyone. I was building something. It started small, a list of consulting contacts I had saved over the years, people I had helped quietly, without telling my family, without needing permission from anyone at home. I scrolled through names and sent the first email without overthinking it. I am available for independent advisory work starting immediately. That was all. No explanation, no justification. Within 2 hours, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Claire Whitmore? A voice said. Professional. Direct. This is Daniel Mercer from Northbridge Capital. I straightened slightly. Yes. We have been following your work indirectly through a restructuring case in Portland, he said. Your approach to operational turnaround was unusually effective. I paused. I was not aware anyone was tracking that publicly. He gave a short laugh. Good work usually gets noticed, even when the person doing it does not advertise. There was a brief silence. Then he continued. We have a situation that requires discretion, high complexity, and we prefer independent consultants who are not tied to institutional approval chains. I looked at the empty coffee mug on my counter. When do you need me? Immediately, he said. If you are available, we would like to schedule a preliminary call today. I agreed before I allowed myself to overthink it. After the call ended, I just stood there in my kitchen for a moment, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator. It felt strange how quickly life could start shifting again when you stopped waiting for permission. By late afternoon, I was on a video call with 3 executives I had never met before. They did not know my family. They did not know my history. They only knew my work. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. We need someone who can see through internal distortion, one of them said. Our current consultants are too embedded in politics. I understand, I replied simply. No emotion, no apology, just clarity. After the call ended, I sat back in my chair and realized something small but important. No one had interrupted me. No one had dismissed me. No one had told me I was too sensitive or not thinking correctly. My phone buzzed again. Tyler. I let it go to voicemail this time. Then another message came through immediately after. Mom says you are shutting us out completely. Dad is not eating much. Can you just talk to us? I read it once, then set the phone face down. That evening, I went for another walk. Same streets, same gray Seattle air. But something felt different in how I moved through it. I passed a cafe where I used to sit during college breaks when I was tired from double shifts. The memory did not hurt the same way anymore. It just existed, like something finished. When I returned home, there was another email waiting. Not from my family, from Northbridge Capital. Subject line, engagement proposal. I opened it slowly. The numbers inside were larger than anything I had ever allowed myself to imagine for my future. But what stopped me was not the money. It was the sentence at the bottom. We are building long-term leadership structure and would like you to be part of it, not just as a consultant, but as a decision maker. I leaned back in my chair and stared at that line for a long time. My phone stayed silent. No calls, no interruptions. No voices pulling me backward. Just the soft sound of rain starting again outside my window, steady and patient, like something finally making space for what comes next. The email arrived at 6:14 a.m. while Seattle was still half asleep under a gray sky. I was already awake. I had stopped sleeping in long stretches days ago, as if my body had quietly decided rest was no longer necessary. The subject line read, "Final confirmation and onboarding schedule." I opened it without hesitation. Northbridge Capital had moved fast, faster than I expected. The role was no longer exploratory. It was official. Senior Strategic Operations Advisor. I read the title twice, letting it settle into something real before it could feel like imagination. By the time I closed my laptop, my phone had already started lighting up again, but not from my family this time. Unknown numbers, messages I did not recognize, industry contacts, former colleagues, people who had not spoken to me in months suddenly remembering my existence. "Claire, is it true you are joining Northbridge? We heard you are leading the restructuring division." I did not answer any of them. I simply got dressed. The office building downtown was glass and steel, reflecting the morning light like it had been designed to make everyone feel slightly smaller walking into it. But for the first time, I did not feel small. I wore a simple black blazer, tailored but understated, paired with a white blouse and dark trousers. On the left side of my blazer was a new badge, Claire Whitmore, Senior Strategic Operations Advisor. The plastic surface caught the light when I walked through security. The guard glanced at it, then at me, then immediately straightened his posture. "Good morning, Miss Whitmore." That shift, that instant change in tone, should have felt strange. Instead, it felt quiet, familiar in a way I was not used to yet. Inside the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored wall. Not polished, not perfect, but steady. When I stepped into the executive floor, the atmosphere changed again. Conversations slowed. Heads turned briefly, then returned to their screens. I was introduced to the leadership team in a glass conference room overlooking the city. Daniel Mercer stood as I entered. "Everyone," he said, "this is Claire Whitmore. No explanation, no background, just presence." A man across the table leaned forward slightly. "You handled the Portland restructuring?" I nodded once. "Yes. We could not figure out the vendor leak for 6 months," he said. I replied calmly. It was not a vendor issue. It was a reporting structure gap between procurement and operations. Once that was corrected, the numbers stabilized within 2 weeks. Silence followed. Not awkward, just recalculating. That was when I noticed it. No one questioned me. They listened. After the meeting, Daniel walked beside me down the hallway. "You do not oversell yourself," he said. I glanced at him. "That would be inefficient." He smiled slightly. "That is why we wanted you here." By mid-afternoon, I was already inside my first working session, reviewing internal flowcharts projected across a wall-sized screen. I pointed once at a bottleneck diagram. "This is why your cycle time is inconsistent," I said. A senior analyst nodded quickly and made a correction without argument. No one interrupted. No one dismissed. It felt almost unreal how simple clarity could be when no one was trying to undermine it. Around 4:30 p.m., my phone buzzed again. I checked it briefly. Tyler. I did not open it. I set the phone face down on the desk and returned to the data in front of me. For the first time in my life, my attention was not being pulled in 10 directions by other people's expectations. It was being used. Productively. Intentionally. When I finally left the building that evening, the sky outside had shifted into soft orange light reflecting off the glass towers. I stood at the entrance for a moment, adjusting my blazer without thinking, feeling the weight of the badge on my chest like a quiet confirmation of something irreversible. My phone lit up again in my hand as I stepped onto the sidewalk. Another message from Tyler. Then another from my mother. Then a missed call from my father. I did not open any of them. I just looked at the screen for a second, then turned it off completely. The city around me kept moving, cars passing, people walking, life continuing exactly as it always had. But something had changed in how I existed inside it. I was no longer waiting to be understood. I was already somewhere else entirely. And far behind that silence I had left behind, my family was finally starting to realize I was not coming back the same way they remembered. The call came at 7:03 a.m., just as I was stepping out of my apartment. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. There was a pause on the other end, followed by my mother's voice, softer than before but carefully controlled. "Claire, we need to meet," she said. I did not respond immediately. I locked my door and started walking toward the elevator. "I am working," I said finally. "This is important," she replied quickly. "Your father is not well, and Tyler said you have been refusing all contact." I pressed the elevator button and watched it slowly descend. I have not refused contact, I said. I have simply stopped participating in conversations that are not honest. Another pause. Then her tone shifted slightly. Can you meet us at Street Ann's Medical Center this afternoon? That caught my attention. Why the hospital? I asked. It is nothing serious, she said too quickly. Just a checkup. Your father insisted you be there. The elevator doors opened and I stepped inside. I will consider it, I said, then ended the call before she could continue. The rest of the morning passed in controlled silence. Meetings, reports, data reviews. But underneath everything, there was a tension I could not ignore. Every so often my phone would light up on the desk. Tyler, mother, father. Each time I let it fade without reacting. By 2:40 p.m., I was standing outside Street Ann's Medical Center. The building looked too clean for the kind of emotions I knew were waiting inside it. White walls, soft lighting. The kind of place where conversations became quieter even when nothing was wrong. I paused at the entrance for a moment before walking in. My mother was already there in the waiting area. My father sat beside her, hands folded tightly in his lap. Tyler stood near the window pretending to look at his phone. When they saw me, all three of them reacted at once. My mother stood first. Thank you for coming, she said quickly. My father nodded but did not speak immediately. Tyler avoided my eyes. What is this about? I asked. My mother hesitated, then gestured toward the hallway. Let us talk somewhere private. We walked down a short corridor into a small consultation room. The door clicked shut behind us, and the sound felt heavier than it should have. My father finally spoke. We did not want to do this here, he said. But you have left us no choice. I crossed my arms slowly. No choice for what? Tyler shifted uncomfortably near the wall. My mother reached into her handbag and pulled out a thin folder. She placed it carefully on the table between us. This is not easy for us, she said, but we need to correct a misunderstanding before it goes any further. I looked at the folder, but did not touch it. What misunderstanding? My father leaned forward slightly. The estate situation, he said. The money from your grandmother. My pulse slowed, not faster, slower, because something about his tone was different now, too prepared, too structured. My mother slid the folder closer. We reviewed everything again, she said, and there was an administrative error in how it was originally explained to you. I opened the folder slowly. Inside were printed documents, trust summaries, legal statements, bank confirmations, and on the top page, a signature I recognized immediately. Not my father's this time, a lawyer's. This fund was never exclusively assigned to you, my father said. It was designated for family educational support. I looked up at him. You already told me that. Tyler stepped forward slightly. Claire, just listen for a second, he said quickly. There is more context now. My mother nodded. We were advised by counsel to clarify that the funds were structured with discretionary authority, she added, which means they were never legally restricted to one beneficiary. I turned another page. My eyes moved slowly across the text, scanning words that suddenly felt too polished to be accidental. My father continued, We are not saying anything improper occurred. We are saying the distribution was within allowable boundaries. I closed the folder gently. So what exactly are you asking me to believe right now? The room went quiet. Tyler looked down. My mother inhaled carefully. We are asking you to understand that there is no debt owed, she said, and therefore no reason for this distance between us. I nodded slowly, but not in agreement, in recognition, because something about the timing, the structure, the sudden appearance of legal framing did not feel like explanation. It felt like correction, like someone had realized the story was no longer holding. My phone buzzed in my pocket again. I did not look at it. My father cleared his throat. We also wanted to inform you, he said carefully, that there are additional documents you should review before making any public assumptions about family finances. My eyes lifted slightly. Public assumptions? I repeated. My mother reached for the folder again, opening it to a final page. We believe transparency is important, she said softly. I looked down at the page she was showing me, and for the first time since this began, I saw something that was not meant for me to find yet. Something that had not been part of any conversation before this moment. My father's voice dropped lower. Claire, he said, there is something you were never supposed to see this way. The air in the room tightened. My mother stopped moving. Tyler's phone slipped slightly in his hand, and I looked at the document again, realizing the truth was not behind me anymore. It was right in front of me, about to be spoken. The room stayed still for a few seconds after my father's last words. Not quiet in a peaceful way, but in a way that felt like something had already broken, and everyone was waiting to see if it would fall completely. My mother finally spoke first, her voice carefully measured. "Claire, before you react, you need to understand the full picture." I looked at her without moving. "Then show me the full picture," I said calmly. Tyler shifted behind her. My father opened the final document in the folder and slid it toward me. "This is what we were trying to protect you from," he said. I lowered my eyes to the page. At first it looked like standard legal language: trust structure revisions, beneficiary adjustments, administrative reclassification. But halfway down, I saw a paragraph that changed everything. Not about what I had received, about what I had become. My mother exhaled slowly. "You were never supposed to see that version of it," she said. I looked up. "What version?" My father answered this time, his voice lower than before. "Your grandmother did not only leave money, she left control rights." Tyler frowned. "Control rights over what?" A pause. My mother answered carefully. "Over the family estate allocation structure." I blinked once. "That is not a thing you casually forget to mention," I said. My father tightened his jaw. "It was conditional," he added quickly, "based on financial maturity assessments over time." I leaned slightly forward. "And who decided I was not financially mature?" No one answered immediately. That silence was louder than anything they had said so far. Then Tyler spoke, almost defensive. "It was not personal, Claire. It was just how it was structured." I turned toward him slowly. "You benefited from it," I said. His expression shifted. Not anger, not denial, just discomfort. My mother stepped in quickly. "We did what we thought was responsible at the time," she said. "You were young. You were building your career. We stabilized everything so nothing got mismanaged." I nodded slowly, as if I was absorbing it. Then I spoke. "You did not stabilize anything," I said. "You redirected it." My father's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is not accurate." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I did not unlock it yet. I just held it. "I have every transfer record from the last 12 years. I said calmly. "Every account shift, every allocation change, every signature." My mother's posture stiffened slightly. "Claire," she said carefully, "there is no need to turn this into something legal." I looked at her. "You already did," I replied. That sentence changed the air in the room. Tyler glanced between us quickly. "Wait," he said. "What does she mean legal?" I finally unlocked my phone and placed it face up on the table. A single document was open. A consolidated financial trace report. Names, dates, transfers, patterns that were no longer accidental when viewed together. My father looked at it for the first time and went completely still. My mother's expression tightened in a way I had never seen before. Not anger, not control, calculation. "Where did you get that?" she asked quietly. "From your own records," I said. "You just never expected me to look at them together." Tyler stepped closer to the table. His voice dropped. "Claire, why do you have this?" I looked at him directly. "Because I stopped trusting explanations that require me to forget what I have already seen." Silence again. But this time it was different. Not defensive, not rehearsed. It was recognition. My father finally spoke, slower now. "You have been working with someone," he said. I did not answer. My mother's eyes shifted slightly. "This is about the firm you joined," she said. "Is not it?" I met her gaze. "This is about truth," I said simply. Tyler let out a breath. "So what happens now?" he asked. I turned my phone slightly so they could see one final line highlighted on the screen. Not accusation. Not threat. Just confirmation. "Now," I said, "you stop telling me what I was supposed to never see." My mother's hand tightened around the edge of the table. My father looked down at the documents again, slower this time, as if seeing them for the first time in a different language. And then my phone buzzed once more. A new notification. Northbridge Capital. Final approval. My hand did not move immediately, but I saw it. And I knew they saw it too. Because the moment that message appeared, every story they had built about me stopped being something they could control. And the look on their faces told me they had just realized it at the exact same time. No one spoke for several seconds after the notification appeared on my screen. Northbridge Capital. Final approval. It was not loud. It did not need to be. The words alone shifted the air in the room. My mother's eyes flicked down to the phone, then back to me. My father followed a second later, slower, like he was forcing himself to confirm what he already understood. Tyler looked confused, then uneasy, then something close to alarm. "What is that?" he asked. I did not answer immediately. I simply turned the phone off and placed it face down on the table. "It is my work," I said calmly. My mother's voice came quickly, too controlled to be natural. "Claire, you are mixing personal issues with professional decisions." I looked at her. "No," I said. "For the first time, I am separating them." My father leaned forward slightly. "You are making a mistake," he said. I shook my head once. "I made mistakes when I believed your version of reality was the only one that mattered." Tyler exhaled sharply. "So what now? You just erase us?" he asked. I turned toward him slowly. "No," I said. "You erased honesty first." That sentence landed differently. My mother straightened in her chair. "We raised you," she said firmly. "We supported you." I nodded slightly. "You supported what you could control," I replied. Silence again. Not confusion this time. Resistance. My father's voice lowered. "You are being influenced by outside forces," he said. I almost smiled, but I did not. "Outside forces?" I repeated. "I am finally outside your influence." My mother's expression tightened. "This is not who you are," she said. I looked at her carefully. "That is exactly the problem," I said. "You decided who I was before I ever had a chance to speak for myself." Tyler shifted uncomfortably. "Claire, nobody is trying to attack you," he said. I turned to him. "You benefited from every assumption they made about me," I said quietly. "You did not question it once." His mouth opened slightly, then closed again. He had no answer that did not collapse under its own weight. My father stood up slowly. "Enough," he said. His voice carried authority, but it sounded less stable than before. "This meeting is over." I remained seated. "No," I said calmly. He paused. My mother looked at me sharply. "What do you mean, no?" she asked. I leaned forward slightly and placed my hands on the table. Not aggressive, just present. "This is not a meeting," I said. "This is a correction." My father's expression hardened. "You think you have power now because of a job title?" he asked. I shook my head once. "No," I said. "I have power because I finally stopped asking permission to understand my own life." The room went quiet again, but this silence felt different. It was no longer defensive. It was uncertain. My mother spoke more softly now. "Claire," she said, "we can fix this. We can review everything together properly." I looked at her. "You had years," I said. "You chose secrecy instead." Tyler stepped forward slightly. "What do you want from us then?" he asked. I considered the question for a moment. Not emotionally, practically, nothing, I said finally. That answer hit harder than anything else I had said. My mother blinked. "Nothing?" she repeated. "Nothing," I confirmed. My father stared at me now without speaking. I continued, my voice steady. "I am not asking for repayment anymore. I am not asking for explanation. I am not asking for validation." I paused slightly. "I am telling you where I stand." My mother's voice softened again, almost pleading. "We are still your family." I nodded once. "You were," I said, "until truth became optional." Tyler looked down at the table. My father finally sat back down slowly, like the weight of the moment had made standing too expensive. No one spoke for a while after that. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything had already shifted into something they could not immediately repair or deny. My phone vibrated again softly on the table. I did not check it. I already knew what it meant. Movement forward, not backward. When I finally stood up, all three of them looked at me at the same time. My mother's face held something close to fear now, not anger. My father looked exhausted in a way I had never seen before. Tyler looked lost. I adjusted my blazer calmly and picked up my bag. "This does not end here," my mother said quietly. I stopped at the door and looked back once. Not emotionally, just clearly. "No," I said. "It does not end. It just no longer includes you in the same way." And then I walked out, leaving the room behind me still unresolved, still unsettled, still waiting for a version of the story they could no longer control. The first few weeks after I walked out of that hospital room felt like standing in a different version of my own life. Not better, not worse, just quieter in a way I was still learning how to trust. My apartment in Seattle no longer felt like a place of waiting. It felt like a place of beginning. The mornings were slower now. I made coffee and actually drank it while it was still hot. I opened my laptop and worked on projects that no longer required me to shrink myself to fit inside someone else's expectations. Northbridge Capital moved fast after that meeting. Within days, my role stopped feeling like a possibility and became a structure, real teams, real decisions, real responsibility. I was no longer an observer in rooms where my voice used to be softened or ignored. I was now the one people paused to listen to. One afternoon, I stood in a glass conference room overlooking the city, reviewing a restructuring plan with executives who spoke to me with a level of respect I had never been taught to expect from people in positions of authority. "Your analysis is cleaner than anything our internal teams produced in 6 months," one of them said. I simply replied, "Then the issue was never capability, it was perspective." There was no arrogance in my voice, just clarity. That clarity followed me everywhere now. I no longer explained myself twice. I no longer stayed in conversations that required me to forget what I already knew. And slowly, without ceremony, I realized something important. I was not becoming someone new. I was returning to someone I had always been, before I learned to doubt her. My family still reached out occasionally, but differently now. Shorter messages. Less certainty. My mother once sent a single line, "We hope you are okay." I did not respond. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood that response was not the same as reconciliation. Tyler stopped calling for a while. Then one evening, a message appeared again. "Mom and Dad are trying to adjust. Things are not the same here." I read it, then placed the phone down without replying. For the first time, their emotional state was no longer something I felt responsible for managing. The shift was not dramatic. It was quiet. Like a weight I had carried so long, I did not realize I had already set it down. Months passed. Seasons changed. Seattle moved from gray rain into softer light. My life filled with work that challenged me in ways that felt clean instead of consuming. I traveled occasionally now, not to escape anything, but to expand into spaces that had nothing to do with my past. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I found myself standing alone outside a building in downtown Seattle as the sun dropped behind the skyline. The city lights began to flicker on one by one, like quiet acknowledgments of something larger than any single story. I thought about everything that had happened. The invoice, the silence, the documents, the hospital room. The moment truth stopped being something I feared and became something I stood inside without flinching. I realized then that forgiveness, for me, was never going to mean returning to what broke me. It meant no longer needing it to define me. Not everyone understood that. Not everyone needed to. Healing is often a private kind of becoming. You do not announce it. You live it. If there is anything I learned through all of this, it is that love without honesty is not love at all. That boundaries are not rejection. They are recognition of self-worth. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. And if you are listening to this while carrying your own version of that weight, I want to say this to you gently. You are not required to keep proving your value to people who benefit from you doubting it. You are allowed to step back. You are allowed to rebuild. You are allowed to become someone your past cannot recognize. Not because you changed into someone else, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. I do not know exactly what people expected me to become after everything fell apart. But I know what I chose instead. I chose peace over performance, truth over tradition, self-respect over approval. And in that choice, something inside me finally stopped breaking. Before I go, I want to thank you for listening. Truly, if this story found you at the right moment, I hope it reminded you that you are not alone in learning how to protect your heart. If you feel comfortable, leave a comment and share where you are watching from. There is something grounding about knowing we are all scattered across different places, but connected through experiences that feel deeply human. And if you want to stay with these stories, you are always welcome here. My name is Claire Whitmore. I am 34 years old, and the core lesson I carry with me is this: your worth was never meant to be negotiated by people who benefit from your silence. And as I moved forward into the life I was building, I could still feel the echo of everything that came before, not as a chain pulling me back, but as a reminder of how far I had come. And somewhere in the quiet rhythm of my new life, I understood something simple but permanent. Not all endings are closure. Some are just the beginning of finally choosing yourself. And if you stay a little longer, there are more stories like this waiting for you in the next videos, each one unfolding a different truth, a different silence, a different awakening, continuing quietly where this one leaves off.